The story is told of two good friends who would often meet at a park bench. One of them was sitting and reading a newspaper when his friend arrived. And he said to him, "Joe, what are you reading? I can see what you're reading. That's an anti-Semitic newspaper. Why would you be spending time reading that kind of nonsense?" To which Joe says, "I read this paper and it makes me feel good." "What do you mean it makes you feel good?" "Well, when I read this newspaper, it says the Jews own the banks, the Jews own the media. I read this paper and I feel powerful." Well, that's an old story. It's literally an old joke, an old story, which is to say that for us as Jews, the awareness of tall tales that have led to deep pain for us as a people are as old as we are. There's a line in the Bible which Elie Wiesel says is the origin of anti-Semitism, in which Pharaoh's courtiers, as members of his inner court, said, "Hinei am b'nei Yisrael rav va'atzum mimenu." Behold, this people, the children of Israel, they are many and mightier from amongst us. The notion that this limited small group in Egypt could have been, quote unquote, numerous, but even more, va'atzum, they are strong, even beyond their numbers, led to a response, hava nichachma lo, let us deal wisely with them, and then the beginning of bondage. That history of Jewish suffering is encapsulated in one day. That is before us next week, Wednesday night and Thursday, the 9th of Av. The Talmud recounts that in the year 722 before the Common Era, and then again in the year 586, again before the Common Era, Jerusalem was under siege by the Assyrians and then the Babylonians, and the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, the house of sanctity, in which the people had a symbol of closeness to God in the gathering on holidays of community. The city of Jerusalem, on the 9th of Av, the walls were broken and more. The temple was destroyed. And we, as a people, went into exile on both of those occasions. And we would do so in the year 70 with the Romans. Scratch that, getting oriented. Scratch the Assyria part. That's the 10 tribes. The destructions of the first and second temples. 586, Babylonians. We've had series of these traumas. And then the Romans in the year 70, the second temple. But the 9th of Av, that's our focus. The 9th of Av coming before us is marked by gathering traditionally in a state of mourning. Literally sitting on the floor as a community by candlelight and reading the book of Lamentations, an account of the destruction, 586, of the destruction of that first temple in Jerusalem, and in that account, Jerusalem as a city is also a living being longing for her children's return. But as Jewish history unfolded after that year 70, it was not the end of suffering, the end of anti-Semitism. And so other key events were linked in the Jewish mind, being close to that date to be recounted. So the expulsion from Spain in 1492, that too was linked to Tisha B'Av, to the summer, and likewise the downfall of the Warsaw Ghetto. As a Jew post-Holocaust, to some degree I felt, the shock of that atrocity would be so great that those tall tales that led to Jewish destruction were to be buried. You know those tall tales? The tales that the Jews control the banks and simultaneously are trying to undermine the economy as socialists. The tall tales that say that the Jews are controlling the media and at the same time are the ones abusing the media. And it goes on with these contradictions of the cabal of the Jews. In recent weeks, there's been a rise of publicly stated anti-Semitic statements by people with big names in the sports world, in some cases in the entertainment world. Sadly, in these recent weeks, there are people who have said these comments in the context of support for an outright anti-Semite, Farrakhan, and sadly they've often been by African American leaders, black leaders. That's part one of the story. There's been this public rise of permissibility to state things like the Jews own the banks, the Rothschilds among them are conspiring. Or on the other side, there have been those who've been saying that, and this is separate, that people like Soros are those who are enabling the attacks on America. A sports writer that I know has really only written about sports. He's my cousin's son. He's my cousin Jared Weiss. He's only 31 years old, and he has fulfilled his persistent dream to become a full-time sports writer. He covers for The Athletic, a major online source for sports. He covers the Boston Celtics. And he was shocked as a young man to see anti-Semitic comments from NFL Jackson to the NBA Jackson supporting the comments of Farrakhan. And what more surprised this young man is that unlike any other slur in our time in which we've become very sensitive to ethnic slurs and racial slurs, this one seems not to have gotten much response. Though I will add Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and more recently Charles Barkley as kind of the statesman of the NBA have come out to condemn these statements. But by and large, the response of other athletes, the response of leaders in the financial sports world were silent. The players were not condemned, as they would have been if they had made that same comment, and you can fill in the blank, because there's a lot of categories of people that we would have said, and owners would have said, you're done. Didn't happen. And so the 9th of Av this week is one that I approach this year with greater sadness and even fear than in the past, that in this difficult economic times, those kinds of hatreds can sprout. I was talking to my son Joey about his cousin's presentation on Wednesday, and he said, I do want you to know, Dad, to pause, to know that these are times of concern for Jews, but we shouldn't forget these are also the most remarkable time for Jews. We, as a people in America, on both sides of the political spectrum, have had influence. In all areas of business and entertainment, we have been able to be successful. Here's one last comment. Half of the NBA teams are owned by Jews. Pretty remarkable. 2% of the population. Half the NBA teams. Well, that's a sign of our success financially in America. It's a funny name, isn't it? Owner and players are traded. Somebody in our congregation wisely shared with me a concern about that kind of language around sports. all too identified, not just in the NBA, but large numbers of baseball owners and NFL owners. And so, bottom line, these are the best of times in terms of success, and with success there's often a quality of animosity, of even scapegoating, pointing of fingers. And so as we move toward the 9th of Av, on Wednesday night we will be having a service brought to you by Zoom with different people reading that book of Lamentations from their homes. And we will be reminded of our sufferings of the past, the tall tales all too often that have led to our persecution. And we will be reminded, of course, of the need to be on guard, that it's never only of the past, and yet at the same time to feel the goodness of our lives then and now on this Shabbat. Ribbon Shalom, Master of the universe, may we not take for granted all the goodness in our lives, our freedom, our opportunities, and even our successes. We know that with successes, there's often jealousy, and out of jealousy comes caricature, and out of caricature can even come hate. May we be guarded from hate. May we always respond with wisdom, and may we count our blessings, for that is wise too. Amen.
Amen.